something bad has happened to someone and therefore I need to change my stance. No, it's not that. Because if we only governed based on sad stories that we'd heard, then we'd never have any laws at all. Because whenever someone commits a crime, people are harmed, not just people in their own lives, but the people who are the victims of their crimes. So if we only went by the feelings, then we'd never be able to enforce any laws. And that's what this is about. Immigration law is about enforcing the right of our country to govern itself, to have sovereign borders, to be a sovereign nation, and to decide who gets to come and who gets to go. Who comes, how long they stay, whether they stay forever, whether they get to vote. And these issues cannot be governed by our feelings. So when we're illustrating the negative impacts of illegal immigration, not just the money, the $130 billion a year, but the actual real negative impacts, that's not to say that if illegal immigration was at the same level that it's at and no illegal immigrants ever, so there's never a murder, a DUI, an MS-13 killing. If every illegal alien was here and they never committed a crime, would that change the need for us to make real changes to make sure our laws are enforced? Of course not. Of course not. But the point that she's making in that audio is that somehow, because someone said, I grew up afraid that my dad was going to get taken away. Well, just throw all of our immigration laws out the window because some kid was afraid. Do I understand that fear? Yes. Do I have sympathy for that? Yes. But the answer is not to say, well, if your kid's afraid, then we definitely have to let you break the law. No. So if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see there's a story on there that I posted. I'm not sure what day, but it's near the top. And it's a fluff piece by one of the mainstream media newspaper outlets where they cover this family where the mom is here illegally and she's got, I think, 6 kids. And so she's got 3 adult kids who are American citizens. And then she's got a couple younger ones or maybe 3 younger ones. And they all moved back to Mexico. And if you watch the video that's in the piece, you'll see that they have the fanciest of everything, the best new stove. I mean, a designer stove. Like, I do not have a stove like that in my kitchen. The kind of stuff that you would assume is for someone who you're upper middle class. And so they took all of their American goods and their property, which they're able to do, and they self-deported, which if you want to take your stuff with you, that's what you have to do. Because when you're deported, they don't say, okay, what if this is yours? Let us fill a moving van for you and move you back to Mexico. No, they just take you and whatever you've got on you when you're detained and they deport you. So if you self-deport, you can take all of your own items. You can decide the timetable for the move. You can find a place to live. So when you get there, you're not standing around, trying to bribe some official to help you find something. So that's what they did. They self-deported. And in the story, they try to make it seem as if there's something, I don't know, just there's something sad about what's happened to these people. When in reality, they just brought themselves into compliance with American law. They took their children with them, the younger ones, and at every turn in the piece, they're asking them these questions that are meant to elicit our sympathy. But instead, I felt like they were empowered. I felt like by them making the decision to self-deport, they actually put themselves in a place where they were able to have control over where they lived, what city they landed in, the kind of apartment they had. When they were in the U.S., they used to buy used cars, fix them up, and sell them under the table, of course. And so that's what they want to do down there in Mexico. And they're in one of the safer areas, but she said all over Mexico, it's not as safe as the United States. And she keeps talking about it as if she had a right to be in the U.S. She had a right to experience the things she experienced here. And now that she's being forced to experience things in Mexico, somehow we're all supposed to feel sympathetic towards that. And the truth, the situation as it lies is that she just benefited from, I don't know how many decades of being in the United States and living like a citizen. And now she's going back to her actual country of origin where she actually has citizenship. And if she doesn't like the way things are there, it's time to run for office. It's time to gather people together and start having seminars in your fancy but smaller living room there in Mexico and teach some people about some constitutionally limited government and things that they could really, really stand to benefit from. Start a revolution. Go back to your country and fix it. Stop acting like you're owed something from this country. So I know this is going to be the cause du jour, the situation as the youth like to say. This is going to be the situation where so many people are going to be encouraged to look at their feelings and say, I feel this, I feel that. No laws. We can't do. Nope. Don't get sucked into that. Because if that's the case, a lot of people who speed, they don't feel like driving the speed limit. It's too slow. They're trying to get where they need to go. If they feel like that, do we stop enforcing speed limits? This could go haywire. Anarchy is the end of this line of reasoning, if you can call it reasoning. All right, when we get back, we're going to have more for you here on Stacy on the Right. So stay right there, right after these messages.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We still have seats available for our September tours, Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg. Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon, that's one tour. And then Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, that is a separate tour. Now, we put them back to back so you can do both. If you're flying in from Texas or Montana or California or wherever you may be coming from, so that you can do those tours back to back with us if that's something you so choose to do. Now, Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation will be with us all along the way as our historian. Stephen will add context, he'll answer questions, talk about the people, the places, the events that make up our early American history. So for more information on this Spiritual Heritage Tour, go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com for the September tour information.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I think there is sometimes too much pomp and circumstance surrounding some of our leaders. I once read a disturbing story in one of our local newspapers about a pastor in our area who does not allow people to touch him before he preaches, and he does not take a lot of time to interact with his congregation. He doesn't schedule too many appointments with his church membership. Now, some may think that this is a little extreme, but to be honest with you, I think it's very sick. We have to be careful as leaders that we don't get intoxicated with the idea of recognition and position. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13 presents the perspective a leader ought to maintain and have. Listen to these words. And he gave some as apostles, and he gave some as prophets, and he gave some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers for the equipping of the saints, for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith. Here we have positions of leadership, offices of leadership in the church. He didn't give them to the leaders for them to have some little select group or some fraternity unto themselves. No, he said, I'm giving these positions for the equipping and empowering of the saints, not for the leader. With leadership comes enormous responsibility. The gifts and the opportunities are not given to benefit the leader, but to bless God's people. Here's what I want you to remember today. The primary task of a Christian leader is to equip and empower others. If God has given you a position of influence as a leader, realize that it's not for your benefit, but it is for the honor and glory of God and the health and wholeness of His church.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
All right, welcome back to the show. I have had such an amazing couple of days, and we were going to talk about my trip to the White House and all of the fun things that happened while I was in D.C. over the past couple of days. But we're going to get to that at the top of the next hour, because right now we have one of our favorite guests coming onto the program. It's Bethany Mandel, editor of Ricochet.com. Bethany, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me. I can't wait to hear all about your trip.
It was awesome. But I didn't get to meet the president, so yeah.
Well, next time.
Yeah, next time. I'll be back, I guess. So let's talk about this NewYorkPost.com piece. And this is something that I think people noticed. I wasn't surprised by it because the left has a prodigious double standard when it comes to saying that, there's a Me Too movement, or this is so brutal, that's so brutal. They love to talk about how horrible certain people are. But when it comes to communist dictators, they have a few that are in their favorites category. And so it wasn't surprising to see them really just losing their stuffing over the awesomeness of Kim Jong-un's sister, who just basically just gave a kind of a askance look at Vice President Pence. And all of a sudden, she's a celebrity to them.
Yeah, it was, I don't know if I would go so far as to say they were loving her, but I think that they were giving her a lot of benefit of the doubt, and they were sort of willing to overlook things that they might have known about her because she happened to look askance at our vice president, and they don't like our vice president. And so they're sort of willing to whitewash a little bit who she is and what she represents because she's a preferred domestic narrative.
Yeah, but this is a woman who she's healthy, but a ton of her brother's subjects are literally they've got worms. I mean, there's
concentration camps the size of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's really horrifying, and I think so much of this is also the fact that people don't know and they don't care. This has been the case for decades, and nobody seems to care that there are concentration camps the size of Los Angeles. And whenever President Trump talks about the North Korean threat and the North Korean regime, people call him a warmonger. And, these are sort of the same folks that are upset that we didn't bomb the railroads leading into Auschwitz during World War II. Meanwhile, there's been railroads, there's been proverbial railroads leading into North Korea for a long time, and nobody seems to care about the trains running.
I feel like giving her any kind of positive attention or not. So there was a story out, like the cheerleaders that they sent, hundreds of young women who they do this enthusiastic cheerleading. And I have to admit, I watched some of the clips of them cheering, and they're fun to watch in an almost mesmerizing type of way because they're so devoted to cheering and they're so uniform. Like, you don't see that kind of uniformity in groups in America that aren't like a part of the military or something. Well, yeah, thank God. But I mean, it's interesting to watch. But then you read a couple of stories and you find out that the last Olympics, some of the girls went home and talked about what they saw. And, in a communist country, hearing that there's plenty and more than enough food, water, electricity, heating, cooling, that there's cleanliness, that people are free to do what they want, that people behave themselves without the government literally saying, we're going to put you in a concentration camp if you don't do this, this, and that. It's so stunning that when people heard it, obviously they talked about it. And 21 of them, I think, were sent to a gulag because of it. Like, they went to prison camp for talking about what they saw.
Yeah, there was a young woman who was asked, so what do you think about South Korea? What do you think about the Olympics? And she said, this is like heaven. And her North Korean translator translated it, I'm having a lovely time. I can't wait to be home.
Right. It's nice, but I can't wait to get home.
And that young woman is going to go to a gulag. There's no question.
Because she said it's like heaven.
And I think a lot of the coverage that sort of was like, wow, look at these moves. People they don't realize the stakes that are in play here. I mean, this is not a dance. This is, if you misstep, your family and you will go into a concentration camp for the next 3 generations.
The question is, I guess, the only people who go then, I guess, if you go and you find it to be like heaven and you decide, I'm not going back, everyone in your family will be killed. So they are told that. They have all of these families under surveillance, and they say, if you don't come home, these people won't stay in their homes. Just so you know, you have to come home.
Yeah, and they make it clear. I've read the Sector account. of folks who have defected in ways like this. If they were an exchange student in Europe, they were constantly reminded of the cost that this would have on their families if they decided to defect. They do not take any chances letting anyone out of the country without having blackmail set in place to make sure that they come back.
It's kind of sad because here in our country, people regularly, I don't get what I want. I want to move to Canada. I'm going to move to Germany. They never want to move to Mexico, but I'm going to move to, this place or that. And what they don't realize is that, they're free to go. They don't have to wait until the election. Just go. Just get out. If you want to go live and be an expat, join the thousands of other Americans who are doing that. And they didn't make an announcement. They just said, I think I'll go to London for work. And then they get over there and they stay. And they don't even, no news stories. No, they're not special. But what they don't think about is that Che Guevara and so many other dictators that they think are cool enough to put on a T-shirt, including Kim Jong-un, that if you say something like that in a communist country, you know what? I'm out of here. And you actually do it, your whole family ceases to exist. And so if you were to ever shoehorn your way back into that communist country, before you went to the gulag, they'd made sure and show you how they burned your house to the ground or killed everybody and where they were killed, all the members of your family. So that it's like we're living in some kind of cartoon universe, right? I mean, I just don't understand why liberals can't get this.
Yeah, no, and I had a really funny interaction with a Washington Post columnist the other day on Twitter, and I said North Korea is the most brutal regime in human history, and I strongly believe that to be the case based on the longevity of this dictatorship. We're going on 3 generations of people who have known nothing but total oppression and gulags and starvation, and the Washington Post columnist, who's apparently their comedic relief, said, I demand you apologize, and called me an expletive for daring to say that North Korea was the worst, the most brutal regime in human history.
It is. I mean, it's currently the most brutal regime currently. So there's nobody else who's worse. And there are some real contenders. I mean, look at what the women in Iran go through. There are some other places on the planet where, being a woman or just being a Christian can be deadly for you. Especially look at all of the people of Jewish descent who are now returning to Israel because they're experiencing anti-Semitism of epic proportions, terrorism and all of that in civilized countries like France and Great Britain. And that's underreported. So, I mean, there are other groups who are absolutely being persecuted, Coptic Christians being killed, having their churches blown up in Egypt. There are people suffering, but I think that the North Koreans, if it were a trophy, they'd have it because it's the worst. Yeah.
It's really awful, and this I think was an opportunity for a conversation about that. By showing the cheerleaders, the media could have said, this is a really captivating image, but just so you know, this is what happens to these women at home, and this is what could happen if they misstep, and just deprive them of coverage. We don't need to see videos of clapping, dancing women who learned these routines at gunpoint,
or who learn them. And not only at gunpoint, but we're told you learn these and you perform them perfectly. If any of you is even caught not smiling, your families will be dead before you get back. I mean, this is the kind of stuff we can't even imagine.
Desperate. It's really, really scary.
So at this stage, what hope do we have that regular everyday Americans who might have tuned into the games just a tad because ratings are down will ever understand the true brutality of North Korea? Because the memes are showing old girl looking mean at Mike Pence, and everybody thinks those are cool. And I'm kind of like, well, first of all, who is she? I mean, I know she's Kim Jong-un's sister, but why should Mike Pence care if she's looking at him hard?
Director of propaganda. She has her own disturbing job title that also should have been described in more detail.
Yeah, but why should the rest of us why should we even care? So I no offense, because we've just talked about how brutal it is, but Mike Pence has to be sitting at home thinking, she looked at me hard because that probably got her brownie points at home. But she's going back home to a place where she's the only free woman in the whole country, and she's only free to the degree that she doesn't tick off her brother. If she ticks him off, he'll kill her.
Or he'll kill her just like he killed his brother.
Exactly. So I don't understand why we should care. I think the liberals are missing the whole point here. The
Trump derangement syndrome is getting a little bit out of hand, I have to say.
Yeah. So what can we expect? Because there's been a few other things that that have been kind of newsworthy. Namely, I've seen some memes last night about not knowing with the Olympic ice skaters as couples, not knowing if they're friends, coworkers, lovers, or if they're married. So many of them are in relationships. And I thought that was pretty funny because I watched some last night. It was late. I turned on the TV for just a few minutes. And there was this couple and they were dancing. And it was a really good performance for the two of them. But the commentators were talking about how she'd had to have stomach surgery. And then at the end, they turned to each other and beamed and gave like a full French kiss. And I was surprised. I'm like, whoa.
Oh.
And then, and not that I've never seen, the ice skaters have relationships or anything like that, but it was just really surprising that they didn't take a more professional tack. But I guess they were like, we're married. We'll do what we want.
Right. I guess so. Eesh, that's weird. I can't even kiss my husband in front of his parents. I can't imagine doing it in front of the world. No, thank you.
So we got that part. So I wanted to ask you just a little bit about what you thought of the new infrastructure that's coming out. So the infrastructure bill has been rolled out, or the package, if you will, has been rolled out. And so where do you come down on the proposal? Are you loving it? Are you hating it? Feeling neutral? Waiting to see what they actually come out with?
I honestly have no idea. I have not. I feel like this is like the 17th iteration of Infrastructure Week, and after like the third, I stopped paying attention.
So you're waiting to see what they really hammer out before you actually get into a deep dive.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of like my philosophy on everything about and from the Trump White House. I give it 3 weeks, and if it's still a story, then I look at it. Because there's the news cycle changes so fast that it's just impossible to follow.
All right, so I guess then we have to talk about it. The budget. Just give me what you felt. The budget. What did you feel?
It's sort of bizarre to see Republicans who spent 8 years talking about fiscal responsibility sort of shirking it. But I truthfully don't pay attention to much of this kind of stuff because it doesn't. I'm sort of a regular American that way. It doesn't impact my daily life in any way, and I'm so profoundly jaded by all of it, by every single politician, by all of politics, that it's just all smoke and mirrors, all of it. And nobody has real, sincerely held beliefs. I mean, we saw that with the Obamacare recall. That was not at all, like, we still have Obamacare. We're never getting rid of Obamacare. And after Republicans won the House, the Senate, and the White House, we still couldn't get rid of Obamacare. I don't have a lot of faith in any Republican, whether it be the president or either house, like either part of Congress, to actually do what they said they would do when they got into office. Yeah.
Well, I wish I could feel more optimistic with you, or make you feel more optimistic, I should say. But I've been feeling pretty disappointed that Rand Paul's been the lone voice out there, and I really thought Paul Ryan would be kind of a someone to hold a standard bearer, because he's had so much interaction with the budget, and it's kind of what he came to be known for before he was in leadership.
Yeah.
But this is a real change, and I kind of feel like, you know how it is when you hear one part of the story, you're waiting for the rest. I feel like that. I'm like, well, is this all? This can't be all. This has got to be something more that you're planning on telling me. Yeah.
The government shut down overnight, and literally no one noticed, not even government workers.
Well, that's because 87% of the government is essential. You're not going to notice if you're essential. You still went to work.
Yeah. Must be nice.
Exactly. I wish my job was essential, meaning always paid. That's ridiculous, obviously, but it's still like, if you're going to wish for silly things.
I would take just their health coverage. These folks took away like anything resembling decent health insurance. Meanwhile, they have like $5 copays, and I would kill for a $5 copay.
Me too. Well, I mean, we have a pretty good plan, but you can always get better. You can always get the government thing, which is apparently the best. Bethany Mandel, editor of Ricochet.com. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks as always. I really enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Happy Valentine's Day. Talk to you again soon.
Thanks, you too.
Bye. All right. That was Bethany Mandel, and I'm Stacey Washington. We'll be back with more after these brief, important messages. Stay there.
The Capital One commercial will forever be etched in the ear of the listener. What's in your wallet is a phrase that won't easily be forgotten. But this is not a Capital One plug. I want you to think about the people that are in your circle of influence. Who's in your circle is my new catchphrase, simply because we don't think enough about the people or spirits that we allow into our personal space. Negativity is contagious and fatal. Misery loves company, and it's fatal to your hopes and dreams. I think we all know someone who, no matter what good has happened, always has something negative to say. Ugh, that really bothers me. That bad attitude and that pessimistic spirit will only cause you to do the same. There's no room for doubt, especially if you're believing God to bring that vision to fruition. Now, this is not a license for you to be mean. It is, however, a license for you to assess who's in your circle and make the necessary adjustments. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
When I hear the president saying, you just have to respect the flag, well, you kind of don't.
Stacey Washington.
So I respect the symbols of this nation. I would never burn a flag. I do believe that they're not sacred, but they are important to us in our national identity. He could say, I feel like I have to respect it, or I feel like I don't respect people who don't respect it. But to say that you have to is not exactly accurate.
Stacey on the Right. Weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk. Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
They want to control who comes into their own personal domain, but when it comes to the United States, it's open season.
No thanks.
So this idea that there's this magical wall, it's like a unicorn wall. It's rainbow colored, and it just separates everything off. It just keeps the money from ever touching anything that might have to do with abortion.
Tap it down.
What happens is those terrible results end up negatively impacting society. That's what she thinks about unborn children. That woman fixed her mouth. She's like Cecile Richard's little sister.
Tap it down.
I won't link it myself, though, because that won't look good. My buddy over at Columbia Law, he's got connections at the New York Times. He can make this happen. Presto changeo, boomo bango.
Yes.
So buckle up. Put your seatbelts on, pull your socks up, get yourself ready. Prepare yourself. Gird your loins. All of those things and more, because there's so much more for us to find out.
Stacey on the Right. Weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk. This is Stacey on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
If the president walked on water, the press would say he doesn't know how to swim. He's become a little bit, I guess, over-criticized.
These Republican women from Miami all support President Trump, and to say strongly would be an understatement. But what about this weekend's tweet about how people's lives are being shattered and destroyed by a mere allegation? It was just right.
He said some are guilty and some are not. And not every accuser is telling the truth. And I think that's important to know.
In his tweet, the president didn't mention Rob Porter by name, but he also failed to mention Porter's 2 ex-wives who claim they were physically abused by the now former White House aide.
Some might look at this tweet and say the president is dismissing Rob Porter's ex-wives.
I think that he's speaking generally. I think he's speaking from his own position as someone that has been accused, wrongfully accused. So I give him the benefit of the doubt.
Do you think the president's compassion may have been misguided?
I don't think that it means that he doesn't have compassion for women. I think that if you leave something out of a sentence or you leave someone out, it doesn't mean that you're not thinking about them.
I think that we're victimizing the president, if you will, by the sense that every single word, every single tweet that he puts out is being scrutinized to the last molecule. I think what he voiced is valid. Should we take the victims into consideration? Absolutely. But should lives be condemned without due process? Absolutely not.
So despite this tweet, you all do believe that he is a great supporter of women and stands up for women's issues.
Absolutely.
As women, do you expect your president to be a voice for women?
He's not my moral leader. He's not my marital counsel. He is our president, and he's doing a great job as president.
Interesting to hear women who voted for President Trump, who now has been in office for over a year, being asked some pretty hard questions by a media source who's interested in hearing them tear the president down. And instead of doing that, they held their ground. And as someone who's experienced this, honestly, it's a never-ending onslaught, sometimes from some pretty interesting corners, of people who seem to think that because the president sent out a tweet that I may or may not even disagree with, that somehow the support has changed. What were our choices specifically? A woman who enabled a man to be a predator and a sexual abuser, a rapist. He exposed himself. Yes, I'm talking about Hillary Clinton. Or a man who clearly has had a more typical American experience when it comes to marriage and family, in that he's been divorced a few times. And that is the typical American experience right now. And when he was, some time ago, but not out of the time memoriam, had some salty private language and said some things that really locker room talk. I mean, how many times do we have to go over this? It's like the media is like, oh, we got him now. All we got to do is just ask a whole bunch of his female supporters, because he sent that tweet out and now they're not going to support him. How were they for their president when President Obama was in office? I mean, he could do no wrong, even when the wrong he was doing was actual illegality. We're now learning that there's a possibility that he not only knew, because we're pretty sure President Obama knew that Hillary Clinton was using the illegal emails, the server, the bathroom server, and all that. Now we're coming to find out that he probably, most likely, he did know that the DOJ and the FBI were being weaponized against the incoming administration. So he sat there and he just kind of looked really like a guy who was just waiting for the incoming administration and biding his time, and he had a little bit of shortitis. That's the videos he was doing with Joe Biden about their friendship. When in reality, behind the scenes, he was orchestrating an attempt to prevent the normal transition of one administration to the other. But by all means, let's talk about President Trump's tweets, okay? I mean, I guess there's no depth meter here. You just keep on going lower and lower. Whenever you think they can't go any lower, there they go. So you got that. And then you've got, there's a little bit more of that audio. This is CNN focus group. Is Trump in trouble with female supporters? Now, I didn't clip that, but she went on to ask some more questions about it. And by the way, welcome back to the program. If you're just tuning in, Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio Networks. 866-963-2037 are the call lines. You can jump on in on that. And we're just, I guess, in a situation where they're going to continue to paw around and dig and, scrape and try to find some reason that at some point we're all the 60 some odd million Americans who voted for President Trump are just going to all of a sudden go, oh, well, you're right. I hadn't seen that. I hadn't heard that. Oh, my goodness, I hadn't read that tweet. So then we'll all kind of flip-flop on over and we'll be like, well, yeah, you're right. Now we should impeach him. And everyone in Congress will say the same thing. And everyone will just start kind of nodding their heads in unison like the North Korean cheerleaders. And then we'll all march together in lockstep to get rid of the president. That's their thing. That's how we're handling this. So I want to get to some real news. First of all, let's talk a little bit about that segment. The visit that I did to the White House. So I've never been to the Black History Month celebration, the reception that they have, and apparently they have it every year. I've never been to it, and now I've been to the White House 6 times, and I don't mind telling you that I was recognizing some of the hallways that, like the hallway I got to go in to enter the building and go over to the back staircase and go up to the area where the reception was held. I've been in that hallway 6 times, and so every time I'm there are different photographs, and I snapped a picture of one of the photographs. The photographs that are in that hallway are chosen by the President of the United States. And there's a picture of him walking with Melania back there. And it's a stunning photograph. So, I have so many observations. And if you missed his speech, you can find it online. But I have a little snippet of it on my Facebook page. I also have a bunch of pictures of the people that I got to meet for the first time. Some of them I've worked with them, or we've, been on in groups together, but we've never met in person. So I can't tell you how my eyeballs were like, it was a buffet for my eyeballs getting to meet the people that I actually met last night in person and spend time with them and sit with them and just, listen to them talk. And I met a bunch of people I've never met before. The Florida delegation was really strong. The Palm Beach Republicans were in the house talking about their upcoming Lincoln Days, and they're having a fantastic speaker and all that. But I just... Bruce Lavelle, who is a major player out of Atlanta, Georgia. I got to meet him in person, and his daughter, Leah, who used to do White House comms and is now over at HUD. I got to meet her in person and take a picture with her as well. I got to meet her mom, who's politically active, and she was there as well. So for it to be my first time for this event, but not my first time in the White House, it was pretty amazing. And there was also kind of just an atmosphere because it's something that's rare as a Black person who's on the right, someone who's a Republican or conservative or whatever label doesn't trigger you. It was a really interesting phenomenon last night to be in the White House, and everyone that I saw, whichever way that I looked, the majority of the people there were Black, and most of them were Republicans who work in activism or work in the Trump administration or work in some form of the government or in consulting, that type of thing. It was pretty amazing. Usually, I'm the only Black person there, or one of 2 or 3 Black people in a venue where it's nothing but Republicans, or I'm in a group that's a mixed group, and it's, there are people of all backgrounds, but the majority of them are Democrats if they're Black. So last night was really unique. And also, the fun of it was seeing people that I usually only see on Fox News. So Alveda King was there, and I've actually spent time with her, and I've met her many times before. But it was fun to see her last night kind of in her own element, kind of queen of the evening. And then also Diamond and Silk were there, and I've interviewed them on the show twice, and so it was great to speak with them again and just say hi. I saw Katrina Pearson, who I've known since the Tea Party days, and I checked in with her. She's doing fantastically well. And really great to just see her there in that space and get to catch up with her. And so many others. I saw Sherilyn Harley Laban, who used to be co-chair of Project 21 and is now doing a lot of political consulting and interfacing with the RNC. And I could just go on and on and on down the list. The other thing that was interesting was there's the big yellow room that you often see in the photographs of the White House. The president often speaks from there. No matter which president it is. Then there's a room next to that that's a green room. The walls are green, and some of the furniture has green upholstery. So we were able to wander in and out of there until a certain point when the kind of pages or whatever they're called basically stepped in and Secret Service showed up. So we started to see OMB Director Mulvaney showed up, and Secretary Perry showed up, and Secretary Carson showed up. And so you see them showing up and you're like, woo. So I was waving because I was just there interviewing those guys a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, will they remember me? And they waved back. I'm like, yay, hey. So the door would open and another person would come into the first roped off area. And as the door opened, it stayed cracked. And I looked in there and I saw President Trump pacing back and forth, reviewing his speech. And then the door opened and stayed open. And I looked, and I mean, I literally could have thrown a phone or a little, travel size bottle of lotion and hit the president or Melania Trump with it. That's how close we were. And I saw Melania walking around and greeting people. And it was kind of unreal because I've seen the president in person, but I've never seen Melania Trump in person. So then they came out onto the stage for the speech, and it was a very brief program, and he did not interface with the group, which I was kind of surprised by because he has walked the line before at events where I've been, but usually I'm back with the fake news media, as he calls them, so I haven't gotten a chance to shake his hand. And so in this case, I was close enough to possibly just squeeze through and get his attention and shake his hand, but I wasn't in the first row was dignitary, so I was behind that second rope. But I was on that rope. I was hugging that rope. But he didn't come down and interface. So when they stepped out, now we're talking about maybe 20 feet between me and Melania Trump, and I could see her face. I could see basically head to toe. Fantastic outfit, hair on point, but mostly it was the face. So you know how people look amazing on pictures or in videos, and then you see them in person and you're like, "Whoa." That was not the case here. That woman is unbelievably beautiful. And President Trump looked like himself because I've seen him in person before. And so it was an amazing presentation. They had the Surgeon General, who's a young black guy who has an amazing backstory. I got to meet his brother, his father, and his grandfather. And he spoke about the historic nature of him being the Surgeon General, and some others in the group who were amazing examples of, fortitude and success in American life. And it was a nice evening. I have to say the hors d'oeuvres were really nice, but I was so interested in meeting every person that I could that I basically had one mouthful of shrimp etouffee and then I moved on. I didn't eat any dessert and I barely drank anything. I just ran back and forth, walking around, meeting people, talking to people. And then afterwards we went to a place, called the Park on 14th, downtown Washington, D.C. And we stayed there and did some networking, and I met some more fantastic people that I'd never met before, some of whom were connected on Facebook, but we've never met in person, including a young woman who's not yet 30 years old and has written 10 books, 10 fantasy fiction books. So we were sitting there talking to her. She also works in politics, and she's a conservative. I have to say, I was disappointed that I didn't get to meet the president, but I felt like it was worth the trip because of all the people that I met, potential interviewees, people who are going to come on the program and talk about what they do. So that's always wonderful. And also the opportunity to interface and sometimes you have to be there. And of course, if you look in the pictures, you'll see Sheriff David Clark. There's some others there that I got to see. But some of the people that I met that I didn't take pictures with are the ones that I'm looking forward to interviewing on the program, and just having them on here so you can listen to their perspectives. And so it was worth it, I think. I have never been this tired of traveling. I can't think of a time. Even after I've been to CPAC and stayed all 5 days, which I think I did back in 2012 and 2014, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't been this sick of flying around. And I've gotten some really cool perks from Southwest for doing all of this traveling within a short period of time. But I just want to stay home for a while and sleep in my own bed and eat my own food, and not have to sit next to people. People who are literally, they're in an elbow fight with you for the armrest and they're in the middle seat and they showed up last. Yeah, that's what we got going on in America right now. We have an airline industry that packs you in like a sardine. So you have to physically touch the person next to you for the whole 2-hour and 10-minute flight. And on top of touching them the whole time, they got to try to act like after they sat down last and your arm was already there, that they own the armrest and they're going to try to get you out of it or sigh a whole bunch and lean forward like you care what's on their iPad. Y'all know me. I can cut you quick with some sarcasm and it would have been a scene. And then you would have seen me on CNN getting thrown off the flight or getting the plane diverted. So I kept my lips pressed together. But I was this close. I was this close to letting my little frustrated, travel-weary person out, unleashing the beast. But I didn't. I made it back. And now I'm here with you. So we'll have hour 2 right after these messages. Stay there.
Urban Family Talk.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. Do you believe that we are living in the last days? In the culture we live in today, and dare I say even in our church culture, we are guilty of not looking towards Christ's return, but are in fact bogged down with the cares of this world. Do you find yourself more concerned about this world than you are about the world to come? Be encouraged to live as if Christ is coming back today. Stay connected at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. Happening right now, police are responding to reports of an active shooter in Parkland, Florida, near Coral Springs. WSVN's Vanessa Medina has more from the scene.
Parents arriving to the scene not knowing what's going on. They're not letting anyone within a mile radius to each direction of the school. Fire rescue, I would say about 25 to 30 Broward Sheriff's deputies. You can hear them you can hear them right now. They're just passing me. We've got more fire rescue passing me as well. We've got paramedics passing me as well. They have set up a perimeter within about a mile in each direction. I had one parent tell me that her daughter was on the phone when there were shots ringing out, and her daughter just hung up, and she hasn't been able to get back in contact with her child.
Fox News is reporting that the FBI is now responding to the shooting at the high school, and President Trump has been made aware of the situation. 3 people were in a vehicle the National Security Agency says tried to make an unauthorized entry onto the spy agency's campus this morning in an incident that led to gunfire and left 3 people injured. FBI Special Agent in Charge Gordon Johnson told a news conference that the 3 injured were the driver of the vehicle, an NSA police officer, and a civilian onlooker. Johnson says 2 other people who were in the vehicle have been taken into custody and were being questioned. A few immigration proposals are now being considered in the Senate, but so far none have gotten a vote. Fox's Jared Halpern has more from Capitol Hill.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is backing a plan that largely reflects the president's priorities. It's a chance at citizenship for nearly 2 million young immigrants who came to the U.S. illegally as children, plus billions of dollars for border security and new limits on legal immigration.
Because presumably we want to actually make a law here.
Democrats have other ideas dealing primarily with those currently protected by the DACA program, and a group of bipartisan senators is also expected to outline a legislative solution as well. Any proposal will need 60 votes to advance out of the Senate, though prospects also remain uncertain in the House. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
White House Chief of Staff John Kelly continues to be criticized for his handling of domestic abuse accusations against former senior White House aide Rob Porter. Vice President Mike Pence says he and President Trump still believe in Kelly's ability to serve.
There are very few Americans or American families that have served this nation more honorably or sacrificed more for this country than the family of General John Kelly.
Counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, said the president asked her to make it clear that he still supports Kelly. Former GOP presidential nominee Mitt Romney is running for the Senate in Utah. 3 people with direct knowledge of the plan say Romney will formally launch his campaign in a video on Thursday. His first public appearance as a Senate candidate will come Friday in Utah. The 70-year-old Republican is seeking to replace Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, who is retiring after more than 40 years in the U.S. Senate. YouTube is raising the price of its live television service and adding new channels. Fox's Kristen Goodwin explains.
To accommodate the addition of its Turner-owned channels, YouTube announced the price of a YouTube TV subscription will go up $5 a month. The Google-owned platform launched the service last year in an attempt to entice young viewers who don't want to pay the price for cable. Initially $35 a month provided users with 50 channels, including all 4 broadcast networks, ESPN and AMC, but the addition of programs like Cartoon Network, TBS, and MLB Network sparked a price bump. New YouTube TV subscriptions will cost $40 a month starting in March, but the company says potential customers who sign up before March 13th can lock in the $35 a month rate. I'm Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
That is American Family News for this hour. For more information, visit onenewsnow.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app. I'm Chris Woodward.
Target continues to allow men into their women's restroom and changing areas. Will 2018 be the year Target reverses this dangerous and reckless policy? Protect your family. Don't shop at Target. Sign the boycott pledge at afa.net. The American Family Association will continue to work toward the goal of convincing Target to reverse its misguided policy that places women and children at risk. Sign the boycott pledge at afa.net. That's afa.net.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Well, welcome back to the show. Are you surprised to see me? I'm surprised to be here because there were certain moments this morning when I was getting ready to go to the airport and I was at my mom and dad's house, of course. I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'm already here. I might as well just stay here one more day and make the rounds. Go do some more work. Go shopping with my mom. Get my nails done. I sat there and I thought about it for a few minutes on the guest bed there at my parents' house. I was like, what can I do? I mean, should I stay here? And then I thought, it's Valentine's Day. I'm supposed to be back at home with my husband and the kids. And I've already missed senior night for basketball, which they kind of didn't schedule it until after I'd already bought the ticket to go to the White House. So I didn't get to do that with our daughter last night. And, of course, I missed 2 games. Each girl had a basketball game last night. And even our son had kind of texted me late last night, I guess, when he got done with his homework. And he's like, how did it go? Did you get to meet the president? And so I thought to myself, you want to stay here and act like you don't have anything to do, but you need to get back home. And chief among all of the reasons why I needed to come home, obviously, is because I was scheduled to do the show today. I had a guest scheduled, and I had already had to reschedule people from yesterday. Demetrius took care of that for me, and it's one of those things where I could be like 5 different places right in this moment and be enjoying every one of them, but I have responsibilities, okay? So welcome back to the program, everybody. So glad to be back with you. Thanks so much for the encouraging comments and everything on the posts. It really was so much fun. So DC, I said this so many times before. I've been to so many countries. I've been around the world and I've been to capitals. I've been to Moscow back when it was still the USSR. I've been to, Paris, France, and I've been to Italy. I've been all over the place. I've been to London, and all of those are beautiful, beautiful cities. They're stunning. They're gorgeous places. But there's really nothing like America. There's nothing like our capital city. And as much corruption as we have, and as disappointed as I am in some of the things that have been going on in our government, you just can't take away from all of those stone buildings and the historical nature of Washington, D.C. and its organization. The city is laid out so beautifully. And there's even a difference to the people there. They know they're living in that it's like living in history, living in Washington, D.C. And so there's just something, even I don't know if maybe the people are prettier there. I don't know. It's weird, but I met so many cool people there. Some so I'd never met them before, but also the people who worked at the White House they were an interesting bunch. Even the security. So the guys who check you in and you go through all the different security checkpoints, they were all amazing as well. And so it was a lot of fun to get to go. I always feel really grateful when I get to go do something like that I was included. And I want to give a huge shout out to some of the people who are most integrally involved in getting things like that done. One of whom is Paris Dennard. He's been a guest on the program before. You often see him on CNN and Fox News and other places defending the president, defending the policies of the Trump administration, but also advocating on behalf of conservatism. He's a really great guy, and it was so good to see him again and get a chance to shake his hand again and chat with him for a few minutes while I was there. So just a ton of really awesome people, and it was just a lot of fun to get to go. And as things come to me, I'll mention them, I guess. But I wanted to get to, apparently there's been a shooting down in Florida, and we heard that just over the break. They had a teensy news blurb about it. The White House has issued a statement from Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The president has spoken with Governor Scott of Florida and offered federal assistance if needed. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen also spoke with Governor Scott as well as state and local officials. She has briefed the president on those conversations. The governor, the secretary, and other administration officials will continue to keep the president updated. In light of this tragedy, there will not be a regularly scheduled briefing as previously announced. This morning on the schedule, they had the regular daily briefing from Press Secretary Sanders, which will not occur at this point. They're going to inform as more information is available, and we continue to keep the victims and their friends and family in our thoughts and prayers. When I went on to Drudge a few minutes ago, one break ago, I actually didn't see a posting. I didn't see a posting from on Drudge about the story. So I'm going to go there now and just see if there's anything that I can tell you more about what happened with the shooting. Oh, yeah, here it is. Florida high school shooting, 20 to 50 victims, many deaths. Well, this is pretty terrible. Let's see what the actual details are. 1 dead, multiple injured in a shooting at Douglas High School. So a man pulled a fire alarm at the Florida high school, creating a scene of chaos, and then opened fire on the students there. And he didn't just shoot students, he shot teachers as well. A person was seen being taken into custody after a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. 1 person is officially confirmed dead. Multiple people have been injured. And apparently the person taken into custody is the suspect. Senator Bill Nelson, Democrat, Florida, told MSNBC that there were a number of fatalities, citing Broward County officials, and said the shooter is not in custody, although authorities believe they knew who he was. He called it a really bad day. Footage from the scene showed dozens of officers and ambulances at the school as students ran or walked out with their hands raised above their heads. Coral Springs police tweeted that students and teachers should remain barricaded inside the school until the officers could reach them. And that's all the information that they have at this time. So the story is ongoing and will be updated online. I encourage you to, probably best place to get the most breaking news would be on Twitter. So as far as the remainder of the show, I want to wish everybody happy Valentine's Day. And I want to point you to, if you're a woman, if you're a wife, I want to point you to one of my favorite websites that has continual encouragement and really is a resource for wives, and that is darbydugger.com, DARBYDUGGER.com. Darby Dugger is a wife who has written a book on prayer for wives to pray for their husbands. And she also does prayer. It's like a little marathon prayer thing where you pray for your husband every day for 30 days. It's a quick 60-second prayer. She writes them. So all you have to do is open your email box, and she does those 4 times a year. And so on Valentine's Day, you know, other show hosts might encourage the men. I'm not going to encourage the men today other than love your wife as Christ loved the church. But for us women, we are to respect our husbands. And one of the ways we can respect them is to pray for them. And so I encourage you to go to darbydugger.com and check out the resources she has over there. And, you know, it's the same for everyone. We all need encouragement in that area. And so I'm encouraging you today in that area to pray for your husbands and see, won't God work in the areas that need to be worked on and increase your love for him exponentially, which is what we all could use an extra dose of. So happy Valentine's Day. So I also want to kind of go over a couple of the other things. So the immigration proposal. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background that I have here. So far, first off, before we get to the immigration, there was a meeting at the Oval Office today on opportunity zones. Yeah, so Opportunity Zones Initiative. It's included in the new tax reform package. And it's one of those things that, to be honest with you, wouldn't it have been great if during the tax reform run up, so not just the actual bill itself, but when it was being proposed and when they were hammering it out, wouldn't it have been great instead of just picking it apart and talking about rich people and constantly playing those horrible sound bites of Bernie Sanders. Wouldn't it have been fantastic if they had said, what else is in here? And then went through the bill and unpacked it to see, is there anything in here that's different? Or because I'm like knee deep in this stuff. And this is the first time hearing about the opportunity zones. So today, the president was joined by Senator Tim Scott and Secretary Treasury Steve Mnuchin, who was, by the way, there at the event last night, his daughter, and White House advisor Ivanka Trump. There were other attendees, but suffice it to say, they had a meeting. And Senator Tim Scott told the gathering that he approached Trump with the opportunity zones concept late last summer. And within a couple of days, President Trump was talking positively about this addition to the legislation. So Senator Scott credited Trump's support with getting the initiative actually included in the tax reform package. So the president's not going to get any credit for that. He's not going to get credit in the media for having 150 black people over to celebrate Black History Month yesterday. So we all know the president's not going to get credit for stuff that he does that he should get credit for. Now, remember all the hubbub they had over the celebrations that President Obama had for Black History Month, or anything President Obama did to eliminate inequality and all that other jazz. He always got credit, whether it worked or not. But President Trump's not going to get any credit. So, okay, move on. So Senator Scott said, now we are sitting on opportunity, and I think it's a gold mine for so many kids, so many communities that thus far have not had the access to opportunities. Now, y'all know I'm not a huge proponent of the government being the purveyor of the opportunities, but I'm willing to hear what Senator Tim Scott is trying to get done here. President Trump followed up with Scott's comments saying it's going to be a great chance, a great opportunity. Mnuchin also weighed in and said he was thrilled that the opportunity zones were included in the package. Ivanka Trump said, I've been tremendously pleased to be able to have such a robust discussion with so many of you today and prior to today. And she thanked Scott for his work. You're creating an incentive to bring capital into communities, into communities that are currently being overlooked. Now, I agree with that. Anything that you can do to highlight areas where businesses could invest and create jobs to kind of spread out some of that job creation is going to be fantastic. And there are some things, some kind of details, and we'll go over them as we get further into the infrastructure discussion. But one of the things that I want people to keep in the back of their mind is how during the infrastructure push the last time, a lot of money was simply burned. It was just burnt through. There's no result that was achieved. Some of the money was just funneled to donors of the Democrats and the Obama, campaigns. And those people were like Solyndra and the other little green energy places. They didn't produce any viable, lasting impact on green energy creation, but they took in 500 million there, 750 million there, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, all these companies that were they went out of business within 18 months of receiving those cash infusions, which those are taxpayer dollars they got. So now we have this new infrastructure push, and the president's saying he's going to get these, the permitting processes where it takes 17 years to get a permit to build a road in one state. He's going to get all that out of the way so things can get done because, not to be, I don't support President Obama, but it could be that some of the money that was burned up on some of these regulations where companies that received bids or won bids to do work on roads couldn't actually get pavement laid because they couldn't get a permit. And so the money that was sent to them for the initial run out, it was burned on the permitting process. So this is something that could have happened. Probably did happen, honestly. How else would we know about these 17-year permitting processes without having someone gone through it and complained about it? So there's that. But the other thing is that, so there are going to be fortunes made on this infrastructure bill. And this is what I mean by that. Certain companies are already established and they're well known and they have connections to government. And when the infrastructure bill is passed, because it will be passed, then those companies will be first in line with the kind of, you like to work with who you know, right? I know this is the case for a lot of people that I have interacted with. I'll even hear them say, no, go with this guy. I've worked with him before. He's easy to work with, or he has the crew to get this done. I've also heard people say, don't work with that guy. I just worked with him. That didn't go well. But for the most part, you hear a lot of recommendations, and people usually say, I know him. That's their way of saying He's safe. You can work with him. This is no different in government. Government contracts are going to go to people who have longstanding relationships. That means that certain communities are not going to have as much of an opportunity to take a part of that pie for all of that money that's going to go out to get these jobs done. So these opportunity zones are going to bring a little bit of parity back to the process. So businesses that are up and coming that need a chance to get a start will have an opportunity to partake of this it's going to be a huge boom, the infrastructure bill passing and all that money coming into the private sector from the government. So it's going to happen. We might as well try to make the process equitable in ways that we can without infringing on, other rights and responsibilities. So when we get back, we have more for you right here on Stacey on the Right. 866-963-2037. You're the guest next segment, so call in if you want to talk. We'll be back with more right after this.
Hey, my name's Brant. You ever make a change and then wonder, why didn't I do this a long time ago? That's what's happening for thousands of people with regard to their health care. They're joining Medishare, and then they're wondering, why didn't I already do this? For most members, it costs less than half what they were paying for their old health plan. There's a huge provider network, too. You can customize your plan, and this is awesome. Medishare members can go online with a doctor 24/7. So if you need a prescription for the flu or something, it's so convenient for you and your family. So yeah, this is one of those why did I wait on this things. And if you don't love your current health plan, you're not stuck with it. You can join Medishare anytime. By the way, to give you an idea, the typical savings for a family, about $500 a month. It just makes so much sense. Check it out. They're super easy to talk to. Call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
Hello, this is Bishop Harry Jackson of Hope Christian Church in Beltsville, Maryland. Jesus said you would do greater works than he did. One of the signs in past seasons of revival has been in the great awakenings of the nation. Our spiritual history is punctuated by moments when people come to an awareness that their righteousness is as filthy rags before God. And in the early stages of most of the great awakenings and revivals of our generation has been a period of when people recognize their wretchedness without him. America, we got a long way to go because we do think we're all that. We have an entitlement spirit. I think as God is looking down at America, he sees that same kind of twistedness in the American church. What we need is a move of God that brings us back to the humble place of saying, what I've got, I don't deserve, but I received it because of the kindness and the largesse of a loving God. Now, see, I don't know about you, but I should be dead, not just of adult cancer. I should have been dead for foolishness in my teenage years. I don't know about you, but somehow God spared me. I'm somebody who owes God a debt of gratitude and service. Join us this Sunday morning at 6251 Amandale Road in Beltsville or on the web at thehopeconnection.org.
Welcome back to Stacey on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
You might be looking in the wrong place because there's an ex-White House employee who cannot stop spilling stuff. She's not shy about it. Take a look.
As bad as y'all think Trump is, you would be worried about Pence. I'm just going to say that.
I know.
So everybody that's wishing for impeachment might want to reconsider their life.
Absolutely.
We would be begging for days of Trump back if Pence became president. That's all I'm saying. He's extreme. I'm Christian. I love Jesus. But he thinks Jesus tells him to say things that are like, I'm like, Jesus ain't say that.
Well, that's pretty leaky to me. And so there's a lot of places leaks are happening.
And I think it's, Sarah Sanders, I don't know if she puts her notes on a dry erase board. She does more spin. She should be on Dancing with the
Sorry for her. I feel sorry for Sarah because besides Melania, she has the hardest job in the White House.
She's got a hard job. But the leaks, you blame it on the media. But there's so many people in that doggone house that they don't have the security clearance. I mean, I don't.
The Michael Wolff book. Everything was in that book because there was no security clearance on him or other people
and they
coming
just
in
let
and
him
out.
sit around and listen.
Yeah, but we disproved a lot of what he said in the book on
we
this
didn't
very
disprove
show.
a lot of it.
Well, he admitted it was a lot of it off the record.
We questioned
This has
some
nothing to
stuff.
do with Michael Wolff. This has to do with Omarosa, who worked in the White House being on a reality television show. I will say that the leaking that they're talking about, her dish is not that interesting. Okay, Mike Pence is a lot more
I watched that
conservative.
Big Brother.
Okay, so you know who you're listening to, right? You know who that was. It's The View. And the last voice you heard was Meghan McCain, who is their conservative, stand-in. That's her viewpoint there. And the others, you heard Whoopi, you heard Joy Behar, you heard that one who's been gone. I guess she's back. Okay, anyway. So they're having this conversation about Omarosa's comments on TV. And I guess I went into it a tad, but I guess I need to, go ahead and be very clear about how I feel about that. So first off, what exactly is the deal with Omarosa going onto a reality TV show to talk about her time in the White House like she didn't have one of the best gigs going when she was there? Okay. Yeah. And I understand, if you work for someone and then it doesn't work out and there's no more loyalty left there. But there's also something called good common sense. And so I'm gonna have to go in on this for a second here. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to go in. I have to. So here's the deal. First, I want to just, where was she? She had an office in the White House. She had a security clearance. She had the opportunity at one point until General Kelly showed up as chief of staff. She had walk-in privileges, so she could just get up from her desk and grab her little cup of joe, and she could just stroll her little old self right on into the White House, and not the White House, stroll from one room of the White House into the Oval Office. Just, knock, knock, push, and she's in the Oval Office, and she's not talking to a page or some person who cleans she's talking to the President of the United States, and she could just walk up and say, Donald, blah, blah, blah. Okay. In addition to all of that, she had stationery and email where she could say, I'm emailing you from the office of the blah, blah, blah. She was the advisor to the president. She was over outreach and something other. And she could also have her secretary call people and say, I'm calling on behalf of Omarosa Manigault, office of the blah, 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 the White House. So I know Omarosa is not a true believer. Okay. So, and what's a true believer? You know what it is. You're looking at one. So someone who is primarily interested in achieving some goal, accomplishing some change, or instituting or implementing or rolling back something in government, right? So it doesn't mean I'm not a capitalist and I don't want to be paid for my work, but primarily I'm not doing this for power or for any of that other stuff. I'm doing it because I want to see something happen or I want to see an improvement of some sort. And you guys all know what that is. That's what conservatism is about. It's what Christian radio is about. It's better family life, better outcomes for families, more people coming to Christ. I mean, there's a lot to it. And so it means you can't put yourself first. And so I was told by more than one person that it's public knowledge that she got paid $500,000 to do Big Brother. And I also heard from more than one person that she basically got gypped because that's not nearly enough for someone who actually held a job in the White House who's now spilling her beans on reality television. So she did not get, and let's face it, where's that money going to be? $500,000? What is she going to be? Like, how much of that'll be left this time next year? I'll leave that up to you. So here's the issue that we have. The issue is she had the opportunity in that role to step into some communities, to have meetings with people who would have never sat down with her, but she could have said, I'm calling on behalf of the White House office of blah. I'm writing you. I want to sit down with you. Kay Cole James of the Heritage Foundation, Kenneth Blackwell, Condoleezza Rice. Do you understand that she had a whole year in which to basically say to any American and many foreign leaders, anyone who'd ever done anything and been successful at it, she could have said, will you come to the White House and meet with me? And she would have gotten over 90% return rate of yes. When would you like me to come? This is one of those times where I just feel like it wasn't just wasted. That opportunity was burned up. Any person with a half of a brain would have used that year to meet with every important trailblazer, every person who's ever had a great idea on improving communities, every nonprofit head who's got a thing that's fantastic that they're doing, but they need more funding or they need national attention on it. I mean, if I had 30 days in the White House with that kind of access, that kind of ability to reach out and actually get a return phone call. Because I know what it's like. I have called people who are doing fantastic things before, and they've not called me back because, show's not big enough. Never heard of me. What does she want to meet with me for? Why should I meet with her? It is not easy to get people who are actually killing it and doing a good job to take time out of their busy day to sit down and talk to you. So she had the chance to really, really, really do something. And she threw it away. And now she's out there. And I know this isn't the world we live in. It used to be that if you saw one black person doing something wrong, and you're like, that's how black people are. If you saw one Asian person, you're like, that's how all the Asians are. Stereotypes persist. Some things are true. They're rooted in truth. Some things are just, that's just garbage. Like the idea that black people are monkeys. That's garbage. But there is a certain stigma that attaches. And so who is our other woman of power who was black, who worked in the White House? Condoleezza Rice. But the left never gave her just due because she was a Republican. That woman wasn't there because she was famous from reality television. She had a Stanford education. She's a concert pianist. She knows everything there is to know about football. All of that in one package that happens to be a black woman who also happened to be a Republican who served George Bush with distinction. She was so powerful, Osama bin Laden had a crush on her. Many foreign world leaders, they'd do anything to sit down with Condoleezza Rice. She wasn't just important. She wasn't just intelligent. She wasn't just brilliant. She wasn't just good at her job. She was the trusted advisor and counselor to President Bush. And whatever their differences were, whatever problems she had working with others in that orbit, she never, ever, ever told. She's the vault because she's still alive and she still hasn't said anything. And I guarantee you that as a woman working in that White House, she had some clashes. She had some moments where she wanted to burn it all to the ground. But instead, she held it together because she understood that whether or not the left gives her credit, there's a legacy there. The only black woman to work in the White House at that level, to accomplish what she accomplished, and then go on into the private sector and never, ever, ever embarrass herself or her boss. So then you've got Omarosa, and she goes in, not the same pedigree, not the same background, but clearly an accomplished person with an education who's in this role, and she had a year to do something and she wasted it. And now, on the heels of all of that waste, she's out in the public sphere saying things like what we just heard in that audio clip. Like, what exactly did she just say? So this is what I'm talking about right here. That's why I had to go in on this for this segment. Do you know I interviewed Omarosa twice, and I thought she did a great job on the interviews on the radio show. I thought she did fine. And I was looking forward to doing more things with her, more discussions about what she could do. Not listening to people talk about, well, what did she do? Exactly what did she do when she was in the White House? Now they're just tearing her to pieces. And there's nowhere left for her to go. And this is what I'm telling you. Okay. The left never accepted her once they realized she was good friends with Donald Trump, and she remained good friends with him after he declared he was running for the presidency as a Republican. Omarosa's always been a Democrat. She was a darling in the Democratic Party because she was famous and on television, and she had connections to a billionaire. But instead of them continuing on with that relationship, as soon as President or then candidate Trump became presidential candidate Trump for the Republicans, then they were like, we got to cut him loose. He's no good anymore. His checks, we ain't taking more checks from him. Because remember, Donald Trump used to fund the black community in New York like nobody's business. He's written more checks to Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and held their hands and sat at dinners with them. They've given him so many awards, but none of that matters now because he's a Republican. So Omarosa thought, you know what, I'm going to go up in here and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And when I'm done, then I'm going to write a tell-all book and I'm going to, and you know, so it's 15 minutes of fame. And the White House was at least towing the line that she put out there, that she left, that she wasn't fired. But now that she's fired shots at the White House, they fired back. She was fired 3 times on The Apprentice and she got fired from the White House. So now she doesn't have anywhere to go on the right, right? So the left is close to her. The right is close to her. She's about 8 minutes into her 15 minutes of fame. And she's on Big Brother saying things that aren't doing her any good. She's not winning over any Democrats ripping down Donald Trump. They don't care. They want to hear what she has to say. They want to hear her say nasty things about Trump. They're not going to take her back in. And the right, now we understand that she was never really, she didn't support the movement. She doesn't support the cause. She's not a true believer. There's no scruples there. There's no there. So here's Meghan McCain finishing off why it just wasn't interesting. It just wasn't that good. It's number 3.
I think she's trying to do a book. That's why, that's why every little,
Can I finish?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, not for, it's fine. I just think that she's trying to get a new job someplace. She's trying to be accepted back in mainstream media after working in the Trump White House. And now, I don't know. I actually don't think what she's saying is that interesting.
I think what was interesting is that she said that Jesus tells Mike Pence things to say.
When was she around Mike Pence, though?
Well, obviously she was around him because she knows more, a lot more than I think that we all know about Mike Pence. But what I do know about Mike Pence is I went to law school in Indiana. He is a hated figure there, actually. He's not very popular at all. And I think when you have a Mike Pence that now sort of puts this religious veneer on things and calls people values voters, I think we're in a dangerous situation. Look, I'm Catholic. I'm a faithful person. But I don't know that I want my vice president speaking in tongues and having Jesus speak to him.
Like I said before,
I don't know if I want that.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's different.
That's different. That's called mental illness, if I'm not correct.
But I think,
hearing voices.
You know, Joy, as a Christian, that's just par for the course. You talk to Jesus, Jesus talks back. What concerns me is how long is the conversation
but Jesus
with
is telling him to say things.
I mean, but that's what I'm saying. You know, if you talking to, because I asked Jesus for a parking space.
Can he talk? My question is, can he talk to Mary Magdalene without his wife in the room? I don't know.
So, the thing that we're supposed to do as Christians is when we hear that kind of talk coming out of people, we're supposed to have a tender heart and we're supposed to feel sympathetic towards them. We're supposed to understand that they're on the bullet train to hell, and that the kind of ideas that they're putting forward and mocking true relationship with Jesus Christ, mocking the acknowledgement that we hear from God. If you are a Christian and you pray and you expect that God will direct you, then you do hear from him. You don't hear an audible voice. It's not mental illness. You understand that God makes his will known to you. And so I don't feel that. I'm not going to sit here on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else and tell you that I feel, after listening to those women say those things about Mike Pence and Jesus Christ, that I have a soft, tender heart towards them and I feel like offering up some prayers for their repentance. I will pray to get there, but I don't feel that right now. I feel what feels to me like a righteous anger. Others may disagree about the way that they're mocking the Christian experience. And so one of them, that one that she don't even want to have the baby that was made with her own stuff, because, these are horrible people. And she's sitting there saying, well, that's the Christian experience, but how long? Well, how long do you stay in your prayer closet if you're talking to the Father and you're beseeching him for healing or for a child to come home or for somebody to to get off your back at work so you can keep your job and keep making your mortgage payments. I say you stay there until you hear your answer. You stay there until you know in your spirit that he's heard you and the answer is on the way. This isn't about how long Mike Pence prays. It's about the fact that he prays. It's not about him saying he hears from Jesus. It's about the fact they know he actually prays and he expects God to answer his prayers. Look, the Bible says that the words within the Bible are they're foolishness to those who are perishing. So that's why they're saying those things. And I just got there. I honestly feel a deep sense of remorse and loss for those women because they are on the way to hell. Thank God. I just got there. So we should pray for them that they would come to know Jesus Christ in the most real way there is, through repentance and acceptance, and keep doing what we do. All right, we'll be back with more. Your calls up next. Stacey on the Right.
I'm not so certain we have as much time as many of us think. It's high time for the body of Christ to return with a fire lit up under us to proclaiming the truth of God's word, to proclaim the truth of sin and repentance, and not coming from a high, lofty position, but telling the truth as such were some of us. We have to do that. We have to. But what happens is, and I call this first world problem, we have this epidemic of churchianity in America, to where we are far more accepting and far more willing to embrace the trappings of church life, even if they're void of the presence and power and fire of Christ. And I would say to you, just as the Bible says, that we can have a form of godliness while simultaneously, at the exact same time, deny the very power of the gospel.
Tune in to the Hamilton Corner, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on Urban Family Talk.
It's time to call your senators. We need to tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Senators respond to constituent calls. So call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
Listen to Stacey on the Right with Stacey Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacey on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
In September of last year, you and I were glued to our TV sets as we watched Hurricane Harvey wreak havoc in Texas. Many communities suffered great damage. In fact, almost 400,000 families had their homes flooded. 80% of them, no insurance, nowhere to turn. That's where you and I get a chance to be the hands and feet of Jesus. 8 Days of Hope, we've been around for 12 years, but God has called us to bring the largest group of volunteers ever to Southeast Houston. So we're going to do a back-to-back trip. 8 Days of Hope 14 and 8 Days of Hope 15. Literally back-to-back. You're going to get a chance to serve with thousands of people from all over the world. We're looking for skilled professionals, people who know how to work with their hands, and maybe they do this for a living. We're also looking for people that are less skilled, but are still looking to be a part of something way bigger than just themselves. You don't have to come for all 2 weeks. You can come for as little as 3 days. We provide the food and lodging, and it's free. Go to 8daysofhope.com for more information. 8daysofhope.com. 8daysofhope.com.
This is Stacey on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
In regard to the DPRK, let me just reiterate something that the Vice President had said. The pressure does not come off until they are actually doing something that the Alliance believes represents a meaningful step toward denuclearization. The maximum pressure campaign is going to continue and intensify, but if you want to talk, we'll talk. He also said maximum pressure and engagement can be done at the same time. So I hope that is clear. We remain in close contact with the Republic of Korea. They're a close ally of ours. We are in lockstep with the Republic of Korea as we are with Japan on these matters. At some point, we may sit down and talk. It has to be about, we are willing to get to the point of denuclearization. It's not at that point just yet.
How does the State Department view South Korean President Moon Jae-in's mediating role between the United States and North Korea to start talks?
You know, as I said just a minute ago, we have an ironclad relationship with President Moon, but not only with President Moon, also with Japan as well. I'd like to read for you a quote from him in which he consistently will say himself that denuclearization has to be the goal. I don't have it in front of me right now, but he's been very consistent about saying that. So we're on the same page, and we're very closely linked up with the Republic of Korea.
All right, welcome back to Stacey on the Right. Please go to urbanfamilytalk.com and take our poll. We are actually checking in with you, the listeners, to find out how many of you would be interested in coming to a marriage family conference held in Tupelo. A lot of the hosts from Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio would be present and speaking, including myself. And we're interested in finding out if you're interested in that and if you would attend and if it would be of benefit to you. So please take the poll and let us know if it's something that we should go ahead and put on, sponsored by Urban Family Talk. And also just check out the good content over there as well. And you can find my podcast there also. You can also find the live stream of the show that you can watch if you prefer to do that at staceyontheright.com. Lots of content over there. I've put up some new things, so go check it out. I want to... You know, it's interesting that the questions have taken that turn and the news media is actually spending some time delving into the nature of the relationship between the Trump administration and the leader of South Korea and how that relationship can mediate the kind of negative interactions that are going on between Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea, and President Trump. And so it's interesting to hear that, and it's really good that they're taking that tack and actually getting some information that's not basically propaganda against President Trump. Right now, I want to go to the phones. Thanks to the listeners who call in. Really appreciate getting to talk to you, which includes Scott from Florida. Scott, thanks so much for calling the show.
Hey, Stacey, how you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good.
Hey, I just wanted to give you a praise report about that tax bill.
Oh,
it
sure.
brought in, for the month of January, it brought in revenue of $360 billion, and with all the expenses paid, $311 billion. President Trump was able to get a $49 billion surplus just from the month of January due to the tax cut.
I love it. And so, again, I didn't see that at the top of Drudge. I haven't heard that on the 6 o'clock news. Who besides you, Scott, who you did a great job of reporting that?
I found it in a Christian mag.
Okay.
It's CNB something. Mm-hmm. And what I do is I will tag that to you.
Okay.
I'm on your Facebook also.
Okay, perfect.
And I will tag that to you. When I saw that, I said, my God, the liberals don't want to talk about that. And I agree with everything you said about Omarosa. She had an excellent opportunity to be the spearhead in the community.
She did.
And she wasted it.
Oh, man.
She wasted it to get other people's approvals.
But
and
Scott,
then for those evil...
So, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is one of those things where, you know how if you were to walk up to somebody and they were taking $100 bills and they were real, not Monopoly money, and they were setting them on fire, you would like almost tackle them to stop them from doing that. Like, what are you doing? That's money. I feel like that with her. Like, yep. I don't have anything against her. So this isn't about me not liking her. I thought she did a great job when she did the surrogate rounds, advocating for President Trump. She did a fantastic job putting the women on The View. They didn't see her coming. She was like a freight train rolling through there. She got her points across. So I have nothing against her. But now that it's over and this is the direction she's going in, I can't help but feeling like she's taking actual cash money and lighting it on fire. And I'm just like, how far do I have to go to get to her to stop her from doing this? Why isn't she, first of all, the wasted opportunity? We just can't talk about that enough. But now, even afterwards, where is she going? Like, is there anybody out there who understands where does this end with her going on TV and trashing the Trump administration and all of that?
Well, think about what she's trashing, though. It's more than just President Trump. It's more than Vice President Pence. She's trashing God. To sit there and say that you are a Christian and to mock Jesus Christ and to have those women sit there and laugh and joke about gifts from the Holy Spirit, that there is the one thing that Jesus Christ said that will never be forgiven.
I mean,
You remember that in the Bible space?
Yes, I do. Yes. And that's a good point, Scott. I'm so like, so with me, when I observe these people, I see them. Okay, Scott, what I do is I see them doing something and I always look for the end. So, you know, when you see somebody out in the public and they're doing something, I kind of say, oh, it looks like they're going in this direction, or it looks like the point of what they're doing is this. So, you know, I try to like bring, oh, so they're telegraphing that they want to do X. And then I kind of accept that and I move on. Even if I don't agree with it, I'm just trying to understand where they're going. I don't understand where she's going with this. So before, when she came out in that interview, that was the day after they announced that she was leaving the White House, she went on, I think it was the Today Show.
Class.
Yeah, and she was very classy. She was very prepared. And I thought, oh, so this is her, you know, this is her game. She's going to come out and she's going to do a couple of dribbles. She's going to give a couple of crumbs. And when everybody is just basically barking at the chain, then she'll drop a book and she'll sell millions of copies. And then she won't have to worry about this anymore because she'll be rich. And so that's what I thought the end goal was. Then she signs up for Big Brother. I'm like, whoa, this does not seem like this does not help the book. Leaking everything out before the book comes out doesn't help.
I agree. You know, but the most important thing, though, Stacey, the most important thing is, even though that the media will not post what President Trump has done, especially Tim Scott with that little rider in the tax law about basically giving juice to the inner cities for business opportunities and stuff like that for them to develop. See, a lot of people don't know that because the media didn't talk about it. They will say everything they can to put down the President of the United States, but they will not say anything to point out what he's doing for this country.
Well, they don't have to, because as long as we got people like Scott calling into the show, this is 18 states worth of awesome. You just told a whole lot of people to look for a story about the government surplusing under President Trump. Because remember, the Democrats love to talk about how when George Bush took office, he received a surplus.
People are going to die.
Yeah, well, he was going to die. We were all going to die, but they also had a surplus. The government was running a surplus from President Clinton's leadership on the financial side, which it wasn't President Clinton. It was the Republican-led Congress, and the purse strings were managed by Newt Gingrich and his guys. And that's how they got to surplus territory, because Bill Clinton just wanted to have a good legacy, so he went along with it. It wasn't his idea. But now here we have President Trump. He's only been there a year. And Scott, you're telling me the man is literally saving us money? Please let me have some more of that. I'll take that all day.
It was a $49 billion surplus based off of January only.
That's enough money to build two walls.
The debt for that $311 billion was from Obama.
Now, Scott, wait a minute before you get too happy. That's enough money to build two walls. Not one, but two. We could do a double thick wall on the southern border.
I'm going to send it to your actual name, and that way you'll be able to look at it, and you'll be able to post it on your Stacey on the Right page.
I will. I'll post it up as soon as you tag me.
Get a TV program. That way we ain't got to pay attention to that crappy view.
Well, okay, so totally, that's a wonderful idea. Anybody out there who wants that type of thing? In fact, we do have some discussions going on about taking the program to regular television where you'd be able to watch it later in the evening. But let's pray that comes to fruition and we can get that done. But in the meantime, Scott from Florida bringing all the fresh news about the budget and the tax reform bill, bringing surpluses. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you calling in.
No problem. I'm going to tag you, okay?
All right, tag me. We'll talk again soon. I love that. So we have a few minutes left in the show. If you have something else you'd like to add and of value like Scott or something you want to discuss, please do call in. It's 866-963-2037. Yeah. So like I said, I get to a place where I'm trying to understand where the person is going. And you might be thinking, well, you ain't going to understand where she's going because she's not going anywhere. And that maybe that's the end result of this convo. It's just so odd that this is what's going on right now. And I think the leftists, so there is one point where the leftists are loving this, and that is The View gets to talk about the distraction that is Omarosa right now instead of discussing what Scott just called in about. I mean, would we be in the Twilight Zone if someone turned on The View and they were talking about the government surplusing $49 billion due to President Trump's tax reform bill? Yeah. Someone should actually tag Meghan McCain and tell her the next opportunity you get to have a few words on your show, why don't you share the fact that, the government's surplusing because of the tax reform bill? That's a huge audience. And it's an audience of people who not many of those people are tuning in over here, right? Not many people. So I encourage with everything I have in my being, let's talk up these good news pieces. There's plenty that's left to be done. The budget that's not my favorite. What they're planning on doing with that, as I understand it, not my favorite thing. I'm not super happy with it, but this is to be expected. So the analogy that I was using, that I've been using for President Trump, and I may have shared it here on the show before, I'm not sure, but I'm just going to quickly recap it, is, you got the ServPro guys. So if anyone in the audience has ever had their basement back up or had a flood, you know that ServPro and other companies like it, but I specifically love ServPro because they cleaned up our house. They come out, and those guys, they don't show up in a tuxedo because they're there to deal with flooding, possible sewage, waste, whatever. They come in, and even if you're too afraid to go in your basement because of what you smell or hear or think is going on down there, they will. They'll go down there. They don't care what's down there. They will go down there, and they will drain it off, and they will clean it up. They'll bring in those huge dryers, and they'll turn the dryers on, and the dryers actually suck the moisture out of the air, and not just some of it, but all of it. And they'll set up as many as are needed for the square footage and the level of moisture, and it'll suck everything, even out of the drywall. So your basement is completely dry. So it's not only been cleaned and disinfected, but now it is completely dry, as if whatever happened down there never happened. Now, why am I pointing this out? Because you'll never see a ServPro guy show up in a tuxedo or a three-piece suit or a business suit or even some casual gear. They're always going to show up in their uniform, and they're always going to be willing to go down into your basement, whether you're willing to accompany them down there or not. Because when our basement backed up, my husband went down there. I went halfway down the stairs, and I was like, I'm not going down there. I didn't go down there until they'd been at our house for 4 days. Now, why is that important? Because we have a lot of people out there who seem to think that a man who said he was going to Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp should behave like a Mitt Romney, who would have gone to Washington, D.C. and put a plug in the swamp, and he wouldn't have drained anything because he doesn't know how, because that's not who he is. So President Trump is basically the ServPro guy. He's not a Democrat, and he's not really one of our traditional Republicans. And he's going to Washington, D.C. to attempt a massive, epic level, weapons grade cleanup of that swamp. So he's not going to go in a three-piece suit, which means we're not always going to love the language. We're not always going to love the results of the cleanup effort as it's in process. But the Bible says we are to pray for those who are placed in authority over us. Now, I prayed for President Obama, not as often as I should have. I'm not going to lie to you. My feelings, I allowed them to prevent me from praying for him as often as I should have. But I did pray for him. If you don't like President Trump, you should be praying for him as often as you feel like you can. Because I understand our human limitations. We have our feelings and we have our frustrations. And so therefore, you get no judgment from me. But that is what we are called to do. And we need to pray for him. We need to pray for his wife and his family. And we need to pray for our country. And so I just encourage you, to do that. And then I also want to encourage you that if you're sitting there and you've got something you need to do and there's a voice in your head that says you can't do it, go straight to the word. You have the mind of Christ. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. He has not given you a spirit of fear, but of peace, love, and a sound mind. When that voice comes, you smack it down with what the Bible says about you. You are a royal priesthood. You are clothed in righteousness, and Jesus Christ has paid the debt for your sin. Say those words to yourself and go get it done.
10-6.
Have a great night. God bless. Be back with you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do